All right, hello everybody. I think we'll get started. I've got 12:30 on my clock, but if you know me, I usually run late. So for all I know, it's 12:35. I'm Natalie Thompson, and I'll be sharing this webinar with you, Nourishing Body and Mind in a Pandemic. Hopefully you can see my screen, and hopefully you can also see me. And then I have a co-host with me today, Dina McLyman, so hopefully you can see her as well. Dina and I come to you today from the Center for Employee Wellness at the University of Rochester. Dina and I both work as wellness coaches. Dina is trained in nursing and I'm trained in nutrition. Before we dive into our content for today, I just want to let it be known that this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted on our website, wellness.urcew.com. So if you don't want your picture on our website, go ahead and turn your camera off. If you are happy to have your face up there, then by all means keep it on. I will ask that everybody please mute your microphone, and I think I set it up so that you're automatically muted, but just go ahead and double check that, please. And then I do have a screen at the end for taking questions. Dina is going to be moderating the chat room for the most part, so if you have a question in the meantime and you don't want to forget it, feel free to write it into the chat room. But again, we won't address questions until the end. If you're calling in today from your cell phone, you can press *6. That should mute and unmute you. Again, please keep it muted. And if you're calling in from your cell phone, you may not have access to the chat function, so please use *9. And what that will do is send a little hand wave to my screen, and that will let me know that you do have a question, and then we can unmute you and you can ask your question vocally. Okie dokie, I think that's it for housekeeping, so let's dive in. So even before, I guess, we get further into content, I want to start with checking our heart rate. So we're going to come back to this at the end of the presentation. But if you already know how to check your heart rate, please go ahead and check your heart rate and then just jot your heart rate down somewhere where you won't lose it or forget it. And if you don't know how to check your heart rate, I'll walk you through this. So you can find probably your pulse right under your neck. Be mindful not to press too hard, just like your pointer and your middle finger, rest it gently at the top of your neck, kind of underneath your jawbone. You should be able to feel your pulse there. Otherwise, you can use your wrist, kind of just beneath where your thumb connects to your wrist and a little bit inside from the outside of your wrist. You should be able to find pulse there. And what we're going to do is I'm going to run a timer for 15 seconds, and I want you to count how many beats you feel in 15 seconds. And then what we'll do is multiply that by 4 to get how many beats do you have per 60 seconds or a minute. So everybody go ahead and find your pulse. And then I'll start the timer in 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and start counting. And go ahead and stop. So jot that number down. I'm going to write mine down. And like I said, we'll come back to this towards the end. Okay, so I hope I'm not misleading anybody today by calling this a nourishing presentation. We will talk a little bit about nutrition up front, but more so we're going to spend today talking about addressing both the system of our body as well as the system of our mind. So our bodies as a whole are a system, and in fact, our bodies are like a conglomeration of different systems that have to work together all of the time in order to bring about good health. And so what we want to talk about today, what Dina and I want to share today, is how can we bring balance and harmony to the systems within our body and also to our mind, and then how can we bring balance and harmony between mind and body. Now, no nutrition presentation would be complete if we didn't have some food pictures, so we will go through just some quick micronutrients. We'll go through quickly some micronutrients that are important to helping your immune system. Since we are in the middle of a pandemic, we thought it might be fun just to review. Hopefully some of you already do know this, but we'll share a few quick vitamins. So vitamin C, E, and A. These three vitamins act as antioxidants. And the process of antioxidation is part of how your immune system works. So, and effectively, antioxidants are fighting off damage that is often naturally occurring in our bodies at all times. And the process of antioxidation is also a process where we want to see balance. So we always have what's called oxidation happening. It's even part of normal metabolism. But especially when we are encountering an infection in our body, we see elevated rates of oxidation happening because of how the infection works. So antioxidants help balance the oxidation by countering some of that damage that oxidants cause. So vitamin C, E, and A, these each act as antioxidants. And then another critical vitamin for our immune system is vitamin D. Vitamin D does not act as an antioxidant so much as it acts like a hormone. And so vitamin D's role in our immune system is to actually help elicit or bring about the immune response through its hormonal communication. Vitamin D we don't normally find in our food, but it's that sun vitamin. So this is the perfect time of year to get even just a little bit of daily sun exposure to help produce vitamin D in your skin cells. So we make vitamin D. And then a few key minerals. We have selenium and copper. These also act as antioxidants, but they're a little bit different in how they work relative to vitamin C, E, and A. These act as what we call coenzymes. So they actually help enzymes in the immune system work and do their job. I also want to note that antioxidants aren't interchangeable. Each antioxidant has its own pathway, its own process, and actually its own target in our bodies. So we can't just say, oh, I got plenty of vitamin C, so I don't need selenium or copper. That's false. Actually, we need all of these different types of antioxidants because they all have different roles and, again, different targets. And then we have zinc and magnesium. I'm sorry, I don't know if I just said this incorrectly. Zinc and magnesium are actually what we call cofactors. So they help enzymes do their job. Selenium and copper don't fully act that way, although they kind of do, but they're helping different enzymes. So zinc and magnesium are also critical in a slightly different way. These aren't necessarily considered antioxidants, but they're important for how the immune system works. Okay, and then just to kind of summarize here again, we're not spending a lot of time actually on food and nutrition today, but in case you're wondering, like, how can I know that I'm getting these nutrients then? Well, rather than sort of meticulously going through and counting how much magnesium do I have, how much zinc do I have, I think it's worth just looking at how many fruits and vegetables do you eat in general. If you recall all the foods that I listed in parentheses on the last two slides, you might note that each of those foods basically fall into four food groups: fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, and then legumes. So not to say these are the only foods we need to eat, but these food groups happen to house a lot of the nutrients that we need for a healthy immune system and a healthy body overall. So the recommendation for fruit and vegetable intake is actually 8 to 12 servings per day. A serving is only 1/2 cup, so don't worry, it's actually only like 4 cups per day on the low end. So if you can, see if you can have roughly 4 to 6 cups of fruits and vegetables combined per day, and eat a variety of different fruits and vegetables if possible. Nuts and seeds, 1 serving per day is actually plenty. A serving of nuts is about 1/4 cup, which is 4 tablespoons, and a serving of seeds, depending on the seed, is usually 1 to 2 tablespoons. And then legumes, 1 to 3 servings per day. This is beans and lentils, basically. And 1/2 cup is a serving. So on the right, one of the things I like to do, here's a picture of just classic minestrone soup, which is basically a vegetable and bean soup with some pasta thrown in. This is how I like to get a lot of these types of foods into my body. This time of year, maybe not so much soup, but basically taking all these same elements and just making it into a big salad. We will post some additional resources on our website for recipes and how you can kind of combine these foods into a one-pot meal or just into your day in general. All right, so all of these foods, when we're consuming them, what we're doing is bringing this process of balance and harmony into the body. As I kind of gave that example with oxidants and antioxidants, right? We always have the process of oxidation happening in our bodies. And so we need to balance that process by bringing in the antioxidants. And when we do that, we start to bring that harmony into our bodies so that body is functioning well and mind is also functioning well. And then we have these fun foods, which basically bring the opposite in, right? When we consume these types of foods, effectively what we're doing is bringing the opposite of harmony into the body. So anything that's high in sugar, anything that's rich in refined carbohydrates, which sad to say is a lot of our white flour foods, you know, hamburger buns, muffins, cupcakes, cookies, a lot of our white bread products, some types of chips. And then of course, all candies are high in added sugar, a lot of chocolate products, of course, alcohol, and then all of these collectively, we're basically just talking about processed foods. So surely these foods taste good and they're tempting and they definitely draw us in. And the point isn't necessarily to not eat them, right? This is the 21st century. I think we all indulge in these types of foods from time to time. The point rather is actually to just be mindful and know when you're eating these foods and recognize that the process of eating these foods is disharmonious, right? It's bringing dissonance into the body rather than bringing balance and harmony into the body. So this is yet another thing that can be balanced, right? If we're only eating some of these foods and the rest of the time we're eating mostly healthful foods that are bringing balance into the body, okay, that can work inside of a healthy lifestyle. Now, here's the bread and butter for today. I want to talk about how else we actually create dissonance in our bodies regarding eating. So I like to say in my clinical practice with my clients, I like to say that the quality of the foods that we eat are actually only as good as the quality of our mind-body state. So what do I mean by this? So our mind-body state, we could say, has two modes, and effectively I'm talking about our central nervous system here. So our central nervous system has the parasympathetic division and the sympathetic division. The sympathetic side is our fight or flight mode, or I'll call it today our stress mode. And then the parasympathetic side is our rest and digest mode, or our relaxation mode. And first we're going to talk a little bit more about stress, and then we'll come back to rest and digest mode. So fight or flight mode, right? Effectively, the body is either operating at any given time, the body is either operating in fight or flight or rest and digest. What I find is that a lot of us are spending a lot more time in stress mode than we're spending in relaxation mode. And I think this is true whether or not we realize it. So stress itself, I think, is a difficult term to define. Part of that is because we all have a different definition for stress, right? For somebody, giving a webinar might feel really stressful, and for somebody else, they might love it. They might love to talk in front of an audience, right? So different things stress different people. Similarly, we each have a different threshold for stress. I gave the example the other day of dishes piling up in the kitchen sink. One extra dish in the sink will drive me absolutely insane, whereas my boyfriend could let dirty dishes pile up for a week and he wouldn't even notice that they were there. Right? So we have different thresholds for the same stress stimuli. And then this last one I think is really critical, is that our subconscious and our body, so our mind body, can actually be experiencing stress, but our conscious mind will say, no, I'm not stressed. This doesn't bother me. This is fine. I've got it. Everything's under control. But actually beneath the surface, there's a lot of stress going on, and we can actually measure that. So that's what I want to talk about on this slide. I like to say there are these universal signs of stress. This isn't necessarily official, I kind of made this up. But there are two things that we can look for in our physical bodies anytime, anywhere to see, okay, I'm saying that I'm not stressed, I'm saying that I've got this and it's all good, but is my body actually feeling stressed? So one of the things we can look for is short, shallow breathing, where a lot of us breathe just up here in our chest, but our full breath can actually go all the way down into our belly. And so we tend to do this when we're at rest. If we're actually at rest, you'll notice your belly rises and falls as your breath actually goes into and out of your belly. That's when we're relaxed. Stress, we're breathing just up here and it's short, quick breath and it's shallow. The other sign of stress is our heart rate. So that's why we did the pulse check in the beginning, because if our body is feeling stressed, our heart rate will be elevated. Or if your body is feeling stressed, your heart rate will be elevated. Same for mine. So let's talk about then what happens if we're in this fight or flight mode, again, whether or not we realize it, and we try to eat. Before we go through this, I just want to share a little poll. Let me see if I can figure this out. Okay, this is just a yes or no question. What do you think is happening in your body if you try to eat while in stress mode? Do you think you are promoting digestion or not promoting digestion? So you should see a little poll pop up on your screen. You don't have to play along, but if you want to, go ahead and throw your answer in there. Eating in stress mode, are we promoting digestion or no? Probably just do another 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. 64%, come on. Okay, that's fine. Nice, okay. Yeah, so when we, and yeah, actually I'm oversimplifying this process. To some extent, sure, digestion does still happen in fight or flight mode. Sorry, let me share the results. Yeah. In some cases, actually, it does like speed digestion along to get the food out of there. But for the purpose of this discussion, I'm going to say no, eating in stress mode, we're not promoting healthful digestion. Maybe I should put that in there, healthful digestion. Okie dokie. So let's take a look at what's happening physiologically to the body when we're in this fight or flight mode. Okay, so here's a visual over on the right side, and I kind of want to, in particular, highlight this bit down here, heart, and then here's your liver, your gallbladder, your pancreas, your stomach, your intestines, and then your kidneys and your bladder. So when we're in fight or flight mode, what we see is decreased saliva production, so we get dry mouth, and saliva is actually one of the first steps of digestion. Saliva is rich in digestive enzymes, and chewing is part of digestion as well. So if we eat something while we have no saliva production, already we're missing the first step of digestion. As we saw in fight or flight mode, we also have rapid respiratory rate and an elevated heart rate. And then we see blood flow going to our skeletal muscles, you know, basically our arms and our legs, so that we can run or fight. And we see blood being diverted from our intestinal muscles, which are, again, our stomach, liver, gallbladder, pancreas, and then the small and large intestine. We see these muscles actually relaxing, meaning that we're going to see slowed down or inhibited digestion. Alrighty, so how can we kind of define stress eating, right? What does it look like then, or eating under stress, I could say? Well, the first one is our current situation, right? We're in the middle of an insanely stressful time. We kind of know what's happening, but actually we have no idea what's happening. We can't, we can hardly plan the weekend because, well, there's not much to do, maybe aside from eating. And so, let alone what's going to happen later this summer or in the fall. We're just living in a time of immense stress, and we literally have no answers, no way to sort of know what's coming down the hatch. So I certainly find in my clinical practice, this pandemic eating, I call it, is very common, right? And certainly I'm not even immune to it. Like, we're just eating more right now, I think, in part because we're home more, and in part because there's not much else to do, and in part because we're stressed, we're anxious, we don't know what's happening. Other reasons for why we might stress eat. If we're stressed for other reasons, right? Just sort of back when life was normal. Just stress from the normal day-to-day of getting to work, the commute, managing children if you have kids, and also other emotional stress response eating. So maybe feeling lonely, maybe feeling sad, maybe feeling angry, any sort of emotional turmoil that we might be experiencing when we turn to food as the outlet for that emotion that we're feeling, that's effectively stress eating. Here's the one I'm really guilty of, is eating while we're doing anything else but just sitting down and eating, right? So I'm definitely guilty of driving 80 miles per hour down the highway trying to eat a bowl of cereal. But I've since stopped doing that, so don't worry. So eating while we're doing anything, while we're driving, while we're watching TV, while we're working, while we're trying to help our kids do their homework, while we're trying to prepare a meal, any of these things, our body is, maybe we're not fully in fight or flight mode, but we're definitely also not fully in rest and digest mode. And then another really common one I see is stressing about what we're eating, right? So going back to that page with the cupcakes and the candy and the popcorn and the chips and the burger and the fries, right? Believe me, I had French fries. I have French fries maybe maybe 2 times a week, right? I don't think anyone, or if there is someone who eats perfectly healthy all the time, that person is the anomaly. Most of us are going to eat junk food from time to time. We might favor different types of junk foods, but so I think it's important to recognize when we're eating junk food or food that's not good for us, yeah, we're bringing dissonance into the body. But if we then go ahead and stress about the fact that we're eating junk food, now we've got dissonance on dissonance. So now it's like a double whammy. So if you're going to eat junk food, by all means, just eat the junk food, be in the moment, and then maybe make a different choice next time. I think that's all I have on this slide. And there's another poll I want to share, which is just simply, how do we stress eat? So if you want to play along with this one, on this particular question, you can select each one that applies to you. It just asks, which of the following ways do you stress eat? So again, I'll run this one for maybe 30 seconds. I see this one's going to take longer than a yes, no. All right, I'll do another 5 to 10 seconds, see if we get to 64% again. Oh, 70%. Hey. This is like betting or something. Okay, we're at 70%. I'll stop there. Okay, so here are the results. We can all take a look at this. I'm alone on eating while driving, but there's only a few of us. But the rest of these are all kind of equal, right? So stress eating, emotional eating, that and watching TV got the highest mark, 68%. Eating while working, eating while doing anything else is kind of vague, sorry. And I stress about the healthfulness of what I'm eating. That one also marked high, yes. So, right, we all do this. Okay, let me get rid of that one. Okay, so what can we do about it, right? Hopefully I'm gonna offer you any sort of helpful tips here. So we can kind of stop talking about the dissonance for a little bit and let's talk about what are some things we can do. I want to say here, I'm going to share basically just one technique, and then on the last slide I have, we're going to practice one technique together, and then on the last slide I have some other examples for you. I also want to say that another one of our colleagues, Catherine Pluta, gave a webinar 2 weeks ago, I think, called Calm is Contagious, and that's also posted on our webpage, and that has some other excellent resources for exactly this type of thing. So, right, we just looked at all the different ways that we might stress eat, basically. So how can we try to do less of that? I don't know if we'll ever not do any of it unless we become monks, but I think we can actively work to do less of it. So step one, I think, is to acknowledge the stress itself, right? Check in with that conscious, subconscious mind and say, okay, I don't think that I'm feeling stressed, but let me actually see what's my breath doing? What's my heart rate doing, right? So what we're gonna do today is a little breathing exercise. So on the right side, this technique is called box breathing. I'm kind of combining two techniques here, actually. I'm combining box breathing with deep belly breathing. If you already are familiar with box breathing or deep belly breathing, go ahead and take a couple minutes to just practice some restful, calming breaths. And if you are not familiar with it, let me walk you through it a little bit. So first, go ahead and find kind of a comfortable position. If you're standing, go ahead and stay standing. If you're seated, you could cross your legs like a pretzel if you want to, or go ahead and have your feet, see if your feet can touch the ground. Go ahead and relax your shoulders if they've been tensed. Maybe squeeze them up towards your ears and then gently roll them back onto your back. And then you might take your hands and just rest them on your lap. Maybe you fold them like this and rest them in your right in your lap, or take your palms down and touch your thighs. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to breathe in to the count of 4, and then we're going to hold the breath in for another 4 seconds. Then we're going to breathe out to the count of 5, so a slightly longer exhalation, and then we're going to hold the breath out again to 4 seconds. And as you're breathing, I encourage you, so maybe take one hand and put it on your belly. You can't see, but my hand's on my belly, so that you can viscerally feel your belly rising as you breathe in and breathe that air all the way into the belly, and then feel your belly sink as you breathe out and push all the air out of your belly. And if you want to, just for the purpose of this activity, as you're breathing out, imagine trying to bring your belly button all the way back to touch your spine. So really kind of intentionally forcing the air out of your belly. Okay, so again, if you want to do this together, we'll do it together. If you want to do it on your own, you can mute me and do it on your own. And if you're comfortable, go ahead and shut your eyes while you do this, or find something pleasant to rest your gaze on while we do this. So let's actually start by fully exhaling. So push your belly button back towards your spine. And then when you can't breathe out anymore, go ahead and inhale through your nose to the count of 4. I guess if your eyes are closed, you can't see me. And then hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold 5. Hold out for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And breathe in for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold out for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do one more round together. Breathe in for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out for 5, fully from your belly. 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And now you can go ahead and gently let your breath kind of come back to a normal rhythm for you. Or if you're enjoying that, you can certainly continue. And if you found that those intervals were too long or too short, you can shorten or elongate those intervals. I know some people can very comfortably breathe into the count of 8 and hold for 8 seconds and breathe out for 10, something like that. 4 seems to be a good middle ground for a lot of folks. So this is, as I said, this is simply one technique, or as kind of two techniques, the box breathing and that just putting your hand on your belly and acknowledging your breath coming into and out of your belly. This alone has actually been researched to help slow us down and calm us down. So it's the very first step that we can take to acknowledge, okay, I'm probably in fight or flight mode. I'm gonna eat now, so can I take a moment to try to come into rest and digest mode before I dive into eating? So let's take a look then at what happens when we eat in rest and digest mode. So we'll see stimulation of saliva production. As I said, remember that's one of the first steps of digestion is up here in the mouth. So we're going to have saliva production. We're going to see that slowed heart rate and the slowed respiratory rate. And then we're going to see stimulation of all of our digestive organs. So we're going to see stimulation of stomach. We're going to see hormonal production, enzyme production, gastric excretions happening, all of which facilitate digestion in the stomach. We're also going to see the liver and the gallbladder and the pancreas coming to work. These are what we call accessory organs to digestion. Food never passes through there, but they're really critical for, again, enzyme and hormonal production to facilitate digestion. And then we're going to see peristalsis in the, as well as additional secretions in the small and large intestine. And peristalsis is that muscular contraction of the muscles of the small and large intestine. As you can see in the diagram here on the right, the small intestine is all this jumbled up stuff in the middle, and then the large intestine is this larger organ that has kind of a vertical axis, a horizontal, and then another vertical axis. I guess they're labeled. The small intestine actually is 30 feet in length, if we roughly for each person. If you were to take that out of your body and untangle it, it's like a giant garden hose, it would be about 30 feet in length. So food has to pass all the way through there, and that's part of what peristalsis can do, or does do. And then again, we also see urine production and bowel production and bowel movement, which is the end stage of digestion. So we want to see from beginning to end, from mouth to bowel production, and that's what we will see when we're actually in rest and digest mode. Okay, so I want to come back to checking our pulse. Now that we've done the breathing activity, I'm going to run another 15-second timer. I'll give you a few seconds to try and find your pulse. Again, if you want to do this on your own, feel free. But if you want me to guide you, I'll start the timer in 3, 2, 1, begin counting. And go ahead and stop. Okay, and then jot that number down if you need to, or compare it to your original number. And I'm curious, I have one last poll for us. Just curious to see if this changed, if that one little breathing activity changed anybody's heart rate. Yeah. Okay. Give a few more seconds here. Alrighty, so here are the results. We did have a couple people whose heart rate went up, and then majority of folks did see a decrease in their heart rate, which is awesome. I'm excited to see that. We had one no cluer, that's cool. Sorry, maybe my directions weren't good. And then a few of us had the same heart rate. Yeah, mine was, I'm gonna say it was a second slower, but yeah, mine might have been close to the same. So again, that was really just one very short, very simple activity. If you enjoyed that breathing activity, you can certainly do that for a longer period of time. And again, the reason that I have the emphasis on the longer exhale is because it's actually the exhale that lowers our pulse rate. And you can check that even without really doing the deep belly breathing. You can, if you want to do it, check your pulse while you're breathing. When you inhale, you'll notice that your pulse starts to tick a little faster. And then if you exhale slowly and exhale longer than your inhale, you should start to notice that your pulse starts to tick a little bit more slowly. All right, so then the last slide that I have here is just, again, as I said, some more kind of ideas or concepts around how can we eat to facilitate this concept of balance and harmony between our mind and our body states. So one thing I think is actually critical is that we begin to practice eating and only eating. And again, I'm guilty of eating and doing plenty of other things at the same time, but I think it's very beneficial if we can reduce all other distractions. And when we decide to eat, just eat. If you live alone during this pandemic, I happen to be alone a lot of the time during the pandemic. Maybe you have a little extra time then to have some meals on your own. It's a perfect time to try eating and only eating. Don't keep your phone nearby. Don't turn the TV on. Do nothing. Don't read. Do nothing but just eat your meal and kind of see what that experience is like. In the same vein as kind of practicing mindfulness around what we're eating, and I kind of want to come back to that concept of our heavily processed foods, right? I think we all eat these foods, maybe to varying degrees. And again, as I'd said, eating junk food is already bringing disharmony into the body. And if we then stress about it, we're bringing extra disharmony. So if you're eating these foods, just be mindful with it. Know that you're eating these foods. Know that it's okay to eat these foods. And also see if you can find, awareness of when is it enough? When have you had enough of that food? And also know, okay, where did you maybe cross the line? Where's too much? So just starting to pay attention really is all this is. Paying attention also requires a fair amount of compassion. So be kind to yourself. I find maybe one of the most common things I see is we beat ourselves up about what we're doing or what we're eating, or feeling like we're failing to be successful in behavioral change. That beating ourselves up is, again, only insult to injury. So practice being a little bit kinder to yourself. Practice maybe being your own best friend rather than more of a worst enemy. Take one or several deep breaths before you eat. That's kind of what we had done. And then another piece, but kind of on the end, is after you finish your meal, see if you can take, 1 to 10 minutes. If you only have 1 minute, take 1 minute. But if you have 10 minutes, take 10. And literally just sit there. And then again, do nothing else. Maybe you could engage in gentle conversation. Maybe you could read something light, but just stay seated and allow your body to stay in that rest and digest mode to allow digestion to really get underway. Okay, I think that's all that I have for today. Thank you all for staying with us. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to write into the chat room. I guess writing into the chat room would be ideal for any questions that there might be. Or anything that you maybe thought this would cover that didn't get covered. No takers? Alrighty. Maybe there's one. Oh, somebody thought today was about sleep. Sleep is next week, and yes, actually, sleep might have originally been scheduled for today, and just actually due to some situations at work, we had to bump everything back by a week. So sleep has not happened yet, so you haven't missed it, but sleep will be at 12:30 Wednesday next week. Thank you. Are there any apps? Dina, I'll defer to you.
If we're talking about apps as far as relaxation.
Dang, do I have you muted?
Can you hear me?
Oh, no, sorry, you're not. Go ahead.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, so some apps that are helpful, that some people have found helpful for guided meditation is the Calm app. That's a good one, and Headspace is another good one. And I believe they're offering discount codes for healthcare providers or free extended trial periods for like 6 months for healthcare providers as well. So you just want to Google that with Headspace and Calm.
Yeah, nice recommendation for sure. Especially because a lot of this conversation is about mindfulness, and I'm less familiar with Headspace, but I know that Calm kind of branches out with their approach to mindfulness, so they may have some mindful eating resources. There's also an interesting website called mindful.org, and they have some free guided meditations online, and also just some interesting readings, I think. Good question. Thank you, everybody. Any other questions? Alrighty, I'll share just our website again. Oops, sorry, I've marked up my screen. So again, our website is wellness.urcew.com. You can find this webinar and the Calm is Contagious, and also Moving Through a Pandemic is another webinar that we shared a few weeks back. And you can also, after next week, you'll find the sleep, Better Sleep, I think they're calling it, is our 4th webinar for this series. And that will be presented live next Wednesday at 12:30. Okie dokie. Thanks everybody for joining us. And I hope, oh, one more chat. Oh, thanks, Catherine. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon. Enjoy the sun.
Bye.